folks, welcome one and all. Welcome to Lightspeed Racing. And a welcome to the Twilight Cup. So new cup, new championship, new format, and a new racing adventure. So let's see what we can get and what kind of adventures we can have with some of our drivers here. We'll get straight into things in a little second. We're just waiting for a sort of final technical addendum. Just waiting for a couple of technical issues to be resolved, and then we will be jumping straight into the session with you. But let's actually talk about the cup itself, what we can expect to see from this championship, from this series. And we have a lot of ground to cover. So the Twilight Cup, it is, as the name implies, our late night racing league. Of course, if you do want to join and get involved, you can join in the Discord using the link in the description, or you can jump in and head on over to our Patreon if you're interested in supporting what we do over here. And with that being said, let's talk about the race that's coming. So we are heading to Valencia for our first round of the Twilight Cup here. We have got a pretty challenging racetrack. We've got, say, 14 corners, 4,005 meters, so 4 kilometers almost on the dot of clean, hard racing. And I, for one, cannot wait to see the kind of racing spectacle that we can see. So we have a 30-minute practice session, 20 minutes of qualifying, and then a 45-minute race. No mandatory pit stop, but we have 3 classes. We have amateur, pro-am, and professional. As a reminder, folks, we do cater to a variety of skill levels here at LSR. So whether you're a bit more a confident driver, pushing to the higher ends of the upper classes, or you're a driver looking more to just get their toes into ACC for the first time, there really is a place for everyone. Just waiting for a final. Just waiting for the final sign off of jumping in. And then we will be in. Alright folks, so just in the middle of resolving a few technical gremlins before we get jumping into things, and we will be with you for the racing. So I can't wait to see. We do have a few different drivers that I've been sort of tipped off to keep an eye on, but we will get to that when we get down to the track. So this is where I want to see, for anyone who is waiting, and anyone who is in the chat right now, give us a shout. Let us know who you are rooting for, or even if you are in the race itself, then give us a little bit of a nod. Let us know you're here. And looks like we are all good. Yeah, it looks like we're all good to go, folks. So it's time to jump into the lobby and time to see who we should keep an eye on. Let's go. Let's do this. It's Lightspeed Racing, and this is the Twilight Cup. Let's go. first. So this is our pre-practice session. And it looks like they're a little bit loud. Apologies for that, folks. So we're on board with Garen right now. Just sort of find a good place to hop on board. Say we're getting just a little bit behind. We can get a little bit of a better perspective on where he's placed himself on the track. Just finding the track limits right now. Just finding the areas of the track where they can sort of push. And looking for opportunities to get themselves into prime position. Back into an interior view, we can sort of take in the sides, take in the push. You can see a little bit of undulation in the track here. It's a fairly flat track overall, so drivers don't necessarily have to account as much for the undulation of the course around them. Well, we do have bit of progression, so you can see on board the live delta is pushing a little bit out in terms of the track limits, but it's all about free practice, all about finding where those limits lie. So as we have about, say, 60 minutes left in this session before we head over to quali, which will be 20 minutes, and then the 45-minute race as mentioned previous. See, there might be another car coming up behind. That's a 296. What is that going to be? Or is that the 720S? Yeah, apologies for that. Oh, thought we turned that race line off. Just apologies for that brief technical hiccups there. Don't know why that's become. Alrighty, folks. So apologies for the sort of brief downtime we had in the car. So they're just trying to get a couple of technicals fixed, a couple of technicals repaired. We're all good now, however. Looks like we've got Garen stopping on the track. There we go. Let's take a little bit of a... sort of see on board from the heli cam. And let's take a look at Sims over here. Let's see how they're doing. So in number 42, that's going to be in the Lamborghini. And we can take a little bit of a broader look at how the rest of the track is sort of faring. You can see here drivers getting a little bit friendly with the track limits. A little bit too friendly here. You can see in the pit lane, everyone's just sort of gearing themselves up. I think maybe waiting for a little bit of track space here, as opposed to going for a bit more of a crowded scenario. They're trying to find their own space within the track and trying to get a little bit of a free environment to be able to push the track and understand where it is they can really ring out the car. So hop on board once again with Sims, as he's going to be tailing another Lamborghini. Both of them going very wide. Almost having to dodge out the way of the 720S that's going to be coming through. Going to be on board with Svelto here. Francesco Svelto in the Porsche. And they are going to be part of the amateur class. You can see very dark. It is 5:18 AM over here in Valencia. So it is very much a bit of a dark scenario. Let's take a little bit further around the field, as we can see that Boma is going to be pulling to the inside, getting out of the way of cars who are on their hotter laps. Fortunately, not sure what's going on with the ideal line there, folks. It is meant to be off. You've seen it on the cams being turned off. That does not seem to be wanting to work as intended, despite best efforts. Hopefully, when we jump into qualifying, that issue will be resolved. You see right here, hidden. Let's have a little bit of a look around then. So we've got Richard Cook in the AMG. And right now, looking fairly confident with himself. And 9 minutes left here in free practice before we jump into full fat quali. But let us know who your prediction is for who's going to be coming out on top, at least in qualifying here. As in before long, we will have some drivers getting to sort of push the boundaries. Now, this is a new series. This is a new league. And for those who are familiar with LSR, those who are familiar will be definitely looking to prove their worth here. So it looks like we are going to have to quickly hop back to just resolve a technical issue with that ideal line and get that removed off of the screen. There we go. Looks like it's all been resolved, luckily. No more of that pesky line. Thank you for everyone being patient and bearing with us. As you can see, I got the Aston Martin. The Aston Martin, Daniel Moffat here in the Pro class, who is going to be coming out of the pits here. Now we get to see the British really sort of stretch its legs. I've got to say Valencia is more known for its MotoGP and motorcycle prowess, but it does have its space for sure in GT3 and GT racing. As you can see, it's a fairly small, very tight, very technical track. Echoes a lot of similarities with that of the Catalunya circuit in Spain. In the same way that you've got to say a sort of tight technical section, and then it sort of opens up around the start finish straight. Big sort of chance for maybe say the lower drag cars to get a little bit of an edge out. So final hairpin here. Got to be heavy on the brakes before leading it out and really getting the car stretched out down the start finish. But let's see the kind of lap times that we can get down from some of these drivers. Good to see some of the drivers actually popping up as in the chat for us. It's great to see everyone there too. As we can see here, Richie is the current driver to lead here in free practice. So we got a 131.602, and then Guerin with a 132.360. We say at the moment we were on board with, I think it says that's Darky. No, that's Moffat with a 33.437. And you can see a good range of times around, but to say this is the chance for everyone to get their free practice mojo in, get their chances to understand the track before we head into the real thing. Can only hope and pray. As we look around the field, let's take a little bit of a peek at Adam Rios. So you're going to be driving the 720S GT3 car. And likewise is going to be sort of really trying to wring out the car, get that thing at the very limit, very edge of grip. It's still early in the morning, so track temps are a little bit lower than some of these drivers maybe would like. Some of these cars as well looking very striking. There you go. That's going to be 133.865. That's going to put his FP time into P9 here for the McLaren before he goes into the runoff. And he decides, yep, that's my fill, that's my turn. And we hop on board with Svelto here instead to take place. So got a 34.8 last time round, best of a 34 flat, and now waiting to see what they can conjure, what they can come up with. So the amateur class is looking just as hot as the rest of them. Just because it's at the bottom of the rungs does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that it is out for the count. So got very mild winds here at Valencia as well, so not too much to affect the aerodynamics of the car, but still something that drivers may have to keep in mind. Zero right behind. Got a couple of cars tailing Spelto here. Looking for that opportunity, looking for that free room to go for a little bit of a move, potentially. There's the 92 car of the 911. Looks like behind you got an M4 GT3 chasing him down. Gonna be looking a little dicey. I'm not sure. Is that Guerin? Must be Guerin. It's the only Beamer on the track. And yeah, you can see there's a little bit of bout between the two. So Spelto's in fact going to head into the pits. They're going to abandon this attempt at a sort of flyer lap here. I'm going to hop on board with Pedron. Also jump in the 720S. So we've got about 2 minutes left in free practice, folks. So this is kind of the last chance for all our drivers to get dialed in with their practice, get dialed in with their car. Maybe they have their setups locked in by this point, but they want to really get to grips with them. And this is kind of the last opportunity before the racing starts to heat up. And I do really wonder if we're going to see some heroes coming out of the woodwork here. So I'm personally very familiar with ACC from a spectator perspective, but not so much from a caster perspective. And also for Lightspeed Racing. This is, of course, my first foray into ACC casting. So again, thank you to everyone who's had the patience. Thank you to the team. Say Craig Starkey, who's in fact racing here today. He's in one of the 2 Aston Martins out on track for the opportunity. And let's make it a good one. We'll hopefully see some heroes coming out of the Twilight Cup here. And we'll have some drivers to watch as this cup progresses. And I think what a track to open things up on as well. We will say we stick on board. Pedron here. Does extend a tad wide, but as we come across the line, what time is that going to be? That's going to be a 1:33.1. So had it been valid, it would have been a very solid time. Fortunately, just a couple of overextends going over the white lines means that it is going to be, unfortunately, a little bit of a miss. Our final 20-ish seconds. Got Patan, who just set best time. 34.3 is going to put him in 15th overall here in free practice. And as the timer ticks down to the end, that is officially end of the session. So everyone's going to get themselves back into the pits. You can see our wait timer has begun. And while we have that, let's see who has come out on top. So you can see there's a couple of different divisions as well. But the top 3 guys on the board, at least in free practice, you got a 131.6 from Richie. You got a 132.3 from Guerin, and from Moffat in the Aston Martin is going to round out the 132.5. Then you move down to the next class. We have 2 Ferraris, the 296 GT3s of Boma and Galamini, who's going to be in with a 0.675 and 0.982. And here we go. So session has officially locked down as free practice has come to a close. And now you can see a little bit of car bouncing, a little bit of a jiggling about a little. And now this is qualifying, folks. Qualifying has officially begun. You can see everyone is going to be immediately heading out and trying to get onto that track as quickly as possible. They want to set a time. They want to set a quick run And they want to make sure that they've got the chance that they need to get a good run out on track. I always say, regardless of the division, regardless of the track, and regardless of your current situation, you need to get a banker lap in. Getting a banker means that you have so much more peace of mind and so much more clarity. Because when you don't have a banker, you don't have a safety net. And that lack of a safety net means that you are going to struggle with keeping the focus, with really sort of finding the limits, understanding the limits of yourself and your car. Because if you overdo it, you know that could potentially be starting from the back. And that is the last thing that you want to be doing in a situation like this. So we're going to be hopping on board, say not with Patan, but we're going to be hopping board with Boma here as we get things started. You can see here, all just trying to get a bit of heat into the tyres, get them cars warmed up and up to temp, ready for an initial quali run. And as a few other drivers have gone out a little bit ahead of these other drivers, you can see they kind of space themselves out appropriately. Here we are, so let's keep an eye on Boma here. If they take onto the helicam, ooh, immediately going very wide initially. Just, yeah, I think it's a little bit too much on the power there. A little bit too enthusiastic to get the car going. You can see checking some of the other drivers. Going to be hopping on board with Scott Cameron of Camino Racing. So very striking, almost Golf style livery with that 720S is looking very good here. So the amount of talent that goes into some of these liveries, some of these designs as well, cannot be understated. You can see as we come in through second sector. Looks to have very tight and very clean control of their car right here. You can see Guerin coming in just behind with that ever-imposing BMW M4. I'm going to say, coming through final sector here. Final corner coming up for Cameron. So they're going very low on the fuel loads. Everyone's just trying to get their fastest car that they can out of this. What's it going to be as he crosses the line? It's going to be P10 with a 34.9. Everyone's kind of filtering into their positions now. And you can see coming through at our first initial set of times. And again, Ricky going to be, what, 31.685, looking absolutely unstoppable. And around the rest of the field, we have a fairly decent spread. So Boma definitely punching above his weight with a 32.787 so far. And then the rest of the pro drivers kind of following suit in the low 33s but high 29s. Let's hop on board with Tan here. So it doesn't have a full proper lap under their belt yet, but it looks like this could be the one that they are looking for. Everyone's coming through here. It's a little bit shaky there from Platan. They're just, again, trying to find the edges of the track, find the edges of grip in order to dictate where they can push and where they can maybe peel it back in terms of the car. Hansen's going to be heading back into the pits already. And then Patana say again, not getting a lap fully under their belt. And Moffat heading back into the pits. Hansen just coming out. Cameron coming across 33.4. He's going to be putting himself in P9. Guerin in a very convincing, very strong 32.982. That's going to be having them in P4 position. So relative to the class, that's going to be P3 Guerin. Boma leads for Pro-Am, and then Cameron in P9 leads for the amateur class. So do forgive me if I do ever mix up at all in terms of, say, classes and things like that. First ever multi-class race I've commentated as well. But looking like a very strong performance from a few of them. So Moffat and Guerin in the Aston and the BMW respectively, looking definitely like pro drivers to keep an eye on. As is a few from our amateur class. So Cameron and Padron both looking very strong in their 720Ss. And Boma in the Pro-Am, or as we said, really punching above their weight in a lot of regards. So on board now with Roger Izmukes in the Porsche here, the 992 GT3. See, the very aggressive aero kit on this car means it's going to be very tight in the corners. Let's see the canards, spoiler, and very aggressive. Perfect to take a track like this one. As you can see, a little bit wide on the final corner there. And looks like it's still going to have it. It's a 137 flat. It's going to put them into P18 position. And then jumping back on board with Moffat, we can maybe have a look and see how one of the top drivers, one of the pro class, can maybe handle and really sort of throw their weight around a little bit. As you can see, the leader 131.3 looking absolutely untouchable and taking his sweet time in the pit lane. It's going to be a very, very good result so far for Roberto Ricci. You can see a few of them say waiting in the pits, getting a little bit of time to themselves. We've got James Chase down the bottom rung for the pro class, already down in P20 for the moment. They're going to need to get another lap under their belt. A 40.0 is going to promote them just to P19, but that's still bottom of class. And they are going to have to improve drastically if they are going to sort of throw away around with the rest of their compatriots in the group. So we had a big jump just now. And we're going to take a quick look on board with Stuart Pryor. Another driver, say, looking fairly comfortable, is going to sort of sieve their way around Chase here. Another pro driver, say, good sportsmanship shown, the space given. Can see if we can have maybe a couple of jumps on the leaderboard on the timing tower as we come to the halfway point of qualifying. We'll do a check-in with the timing tower as well in due time. Looks like that was a big off for someone behind. It was a very big off. Pushing it way too hard here into that hairpin. And now, final corner here, Stuart Pryor. Looks like they know they can get a little bit of an extend on the final corner. They can just about get away with it and still stay within limits. It's going to be a 33.3, so not going to be improving on their previous time, but currently P10 or net P4 in their class so far. It's looking fairly stable at this point in time. Gregorelli now is going to be pushing and getting a little bit of headway for themselves. So 303 amateur class, slap bang in the middle, net P5 so far. Can we see a bit of an improvement? So P18 overall in terms of timings, but plenty of time and plenty of race to give. A little bit later in the morning, so it's 6 a.m. Track temperatures, couple degrees hotter, and generally a little bit more stable, a little bit less wind as well, so that's going to be a little bit safer for the aerodynamics of these cars. They can afford to have a little bit more of an aggressive setup without worrying about its wind sensitivity. So fairly flowing, fairly high speed track means that that aero setup is going to be absolutely vital. As well as balancing your tyre pressures to manage temps. I think that managing your load, especially on the front tyres, and oh, it's a big slide there for Gregorelli coming out of the penultimate corner. Very dicey there, but does manage to catch it. So great job there for Rom, the Porsche driver. As Rios comes to cross the line, looks like they're going to be starting a lap here, so we're going to be sticking on board with them for the time being in the 720S. Going to be sticking on board and seeing what they can do with the limited time they have. So 8 minutes, so realistically that's about 4 laps that these drivers, 4 full laps of time that they have to get themselves geared and get themselves racing in fine position. But so far, Ricci looks absolutely untouchable, I gotta be honest. He's looking absolutely untouchable in that Lamborghini, almost a second clear of the next driver, Aguerin, who's in the 32s. In fact, we check the timetable, we'll check the table here, say 131.317. Going to have him almost an entire second clear of Ricky in the M4, or Guerin in the M4, apologies. But then you've got the 2 Pro-Am drivers of Boma and Gallimini in the 296, really putting the work in with a 32.4, dispelling the gap between themselves and Moffat, or P5, from the Aston Martin, at 32.6. 3 milliseconds separate, but let's check back in on our track as Rios comes across the line. Is it going to be an improvement here? It is, but it's not going to be a valid time. As you can see, does not move anywhere on the board and does not update his best. So that track, that is not a valid lap there, unfortunately, for Rios. Checking another end of the field, Richard Cook here. You can see P9 is looking fairly comfortable with a net P4 for their class in Pro-Am and in the upper half of the pace, while still having a good amount of grip in their car, it looks like. Overall, yeah, we've seen our drivers be, say, it looks like they've got good control and looks like they have got a very good sense of how to place their car. Kind of what's expected. On board Ricci now, on board with our pole sitter. Are we going to see any improvement from them, dare I say? So 5 minutes 50 left in qualifying. You can see Cook yielding. So good sportsmanship being shown there. Of course, we are operating on a qualifying blue system, so if we do have drivers who are on hot laps, it's typically common courtesy, common sportsmanship to let the previous, or let the flying driver go by with minimal interruptions. So Ricci across the line here. Stick with him. And that's going to be 31.5, so is not going to be getting an improvement, but maybe they were just going for a bit of a burn. Maybe this could be the lap. You see everyone going very wide out of the first corner. So they know where the track limits are. They know where they can push in order to maximize their track performance. Perfectly finding the limit and running right up to it. It's about operating within the rules that you are given as the core tenet of being a quick driver. We do see them running fairly wide in some areas onto the curbs and onto a little bit of the runoff. But as we say, you find your limits and you drive to them. Nothing more, nothing less. The perfect balance. We're just sort of sticking on board with Ricci here, in order to understand what makes his lap so good. And so far, it just seems to be carrying speed. That Lamborghini seems to be really good at carrying the speed through the corners, carrying the momentum, not overdoing it on the grip, but also being able to carry all the way through. And that is a new best time. That's a 131.1 from Ricci. He's going to extend his lead even further. And Boma is going to be in P2. So, in fact, we can jump around a bit. Got another Lamborghini coming out of the pit now. There's going to be Paul Sims in the Pro class. They've got a little bit of work to do. They've got P11 in the standings thus far. And they got a bit of a challenge cut out for themselves right now. Let's watch and learn as Sims does look like he goes a little bit wide. Doesn't really maximize the pace through that corner there. I'd say a little bit of a wide entry, goes very narrow, a bit of a late apex, which can be good for carrying speed, but it did look like he had to sort of correct himself and double back on the move, which is going to cost him valuable time. A little bit wide of the apex there. A little bit of curb, a little bit of runoff, never hurt anybody. As you can see, sticking as wide as he can, carry as much speed before getting sharply onto the brakes for the final corner here. So keeping it in bounds, if just about. As you can see, Starkey behind. Sims is going to come across the line, but it's not going to be an improvement of note. You can see the Starkey is just behind, sort of lying in wait. And let's jump to him now. 33.4 last time out, but it was not valid. So the current lap best stands at 133.7. There we go. So it looks like Pro-Am class, but certainly bringing the heat a little bit. Let's see what they can make of this one. And going a little bit narrow on the apex. Doesn't fully carry the speed all the way, I'd say. Doesn't really give it all of the beans. Either way, we've got about 35 seconds left in qualifying, so if anyone is going to get a lap in, it is basically now or never. We've got a few drivers who are coming across the line now. We've got Starkey, who we're on board with as we speak. Going to be going right to the inside. He knows he hasn't got it, let's say 34.1, so he's going to go to the infield and jump into the pits. We've got a few more who are looking to push out. We've got on board with Boma right now, 32.2 and a 33.2 as he crosses the line, so no improvement there. Actually, doesn't look like I'm able to jump to them in a linear order. 33.6 from Spelto, no improvement there either from the amateur Porsche driver. Well, he doesn't seem... Forgive me, but it doesn't seem like there's a linear order to jumping around between the POVs, which is very much frustrating. But here we are, Richard Cook now, all going straight onto the infield, and that is quali over. And that could be where we call it. So, our final standings is Richie going to be over a second clear of Boma with a 1.08 second clean lead there. So, absolutely smashing the pole position spot with Boma in second. Guerin in third, the 1.15 seconds behind. So, 32.29. And Galamini with a 1.5 second gap, so 32.6 just behind. But say leading the amateur class is going to be Padron with a 32.7 in the 720S. So definitely a great job there. And I know I talked about Boma punching above his weight. I know I talked about Boma punching above his weight, but Padron really sort of packing the heat there. So get ACC race control. That will certainly be on the cards for the future. I'm definitely up for that. But no, thank you for the suggestions in the chat, genuinely. I am thankful to see that kind of stuff. Because ACC is something I want to cast more often, and a little bit of roughness around the edges where it is my first time. But this has been great so far. It can only get better from here. Yeah, just a matter of time now before we get ourselves into the session. All right, here we go, folks. So we're jumping in. First thing, and this is the race. This is it. You can see everyone is just sort of getting themselves geared up, getting themselves ready. Session starts in 1 minute. So let us know who you are pegging to win for each class in the chat below. Alright, folks, you just heard it there. 30 seconds to go before this session starts. So this is a final lock-in for everyone to make sure they are comfortable and they are ready to go. I think they're going to take home the Wooden Spoon Award. We love it. We love to see it. Here we go. It is race time, folks. It is 7 a.m. The track is 24 degrees. Basically, zero wind. And now, we are getting ourselves ready. And getting our drivers out on the field. This is formation. So a key chance for everyone to get some heat into their tires. First things out. Especially with the race starting so early in the morning. Time progression is on, but the track temps might not be. And you've got an optimal operating window for these tires that you need to keep them in. That's why it's so important as well to get your setups right. Things like tire temperatures are dependent on so many things. Tire pressures, suspension, even your aero balance is going to have a pronounced effect on your tire temps and how much grip you can extract from that rubber. And the rubber is the only point of contact with the track, so you've got to do everything you can to optimize underneath you. But this is where we could see some big jumps as we come to the start of the race. Hear the engines roar. Alright, the track is about to go hot, folks. You can see everyone lining up in formation here. Track is about to go hot. As we're coming up to the start. Everyone's going to be getting themselves into position. And there you go. That is green light. That is race time. It is go, go, go. The track is hot, and you can see immediately everyone is fanning out, trying to fight for some space out on the track here. And everyone is going to be going full tilt and trying to find some key positions out on track. You can see a little bit of a battle going on between Svelto and that is going to be Blanchetti as well in the Lamborghini. Oh, that's Pryor, sorry. All going a little bit high onto the infield as there's a battle up ahead as well between a couple of drivers here. Say Padron's just sort of keeping an eye down on the field, and all big jumps down. I say Disbikes, and looks like a little bit of a timing bug. And oh, that is contact made between Padron and Patan just up ahead. And they are going to be out on into the gravel. And that is going to leave him really in the sticks for the time being. Richie's managed to get away with a fairly clean lead out of all of this. And then Boma is going to be chasing down. Despite being in the class below, is still going to be chasing Guerin in that M4. Going to be leaving nothing to chance here whatsoever. You can see big chaos happening lap 1. You can see Moffat kind of biding their time, finding their own space, finding their own mojo. And we're going to be hopping on board with Pryor for the minute as they got involved with a little bit of fighting earlier. Are they going to be converting any of that fighting talk, any of that fighting mojo into race result is the question. So they're hot on the heels, the likes of Patan and Galamini. But is there opportunity there? You can see, ooh, a little bit of contact there between Rios and Svelto as a bit of a battle is starting to kick off just behind. So it looks like Svelto is going to be demoted down to P12. And Rios is in P9. Although really losing control of his car, he might got a little bit of damage from contact there. And all making contact as well from Everett. But that is going to be putting the Pro-Am class Pro-Am positioning into disarray as Blanchetti is going to be taking a double overtake. He's not going to be only be getting around. Not only going to be getting around Rios, around Everett too. There we go with the non-linear switching again. It was fun while it lasted. And Boma, in fact, is going to be the one to set the fastest lap of the session. So, great job there from the Ferrari. It's looking very good in the position they're at. Richie's just absolutely run away with it. Crazy to think, but there you go. So, 36.2 does mean that they're going to be quite clear as Cook goes very wide down in net P2 for the Pro-Am class there. A little bit of a battle going to be going on between Patan and Pariah for position, but Patan has got a drive-through, so he is going to be having to serve that pretty soon. And that is going to drop him much further down the order. But they might still be able to preserve positions relative to their class. Question is, as we look around here, we could see a little bit of a battle going on between Homer and Svelto. Don't really know if there's a way to quick jump to a specific driver number or a specific POV. As you can see, everyone's kind of fanning out at this point. They're just trying to establish their own little space, their own little zone within the track. So this is kind of what we're waiting for. We'll see if anyone's going to be making a bit more of an aggressive move. As you can see in a second, Patan is going to have to go in at some point to serve. We're going to stay on board with Homer just for the time being, as they could be shaping up on a move, but that being said, they do go very wide through the first corner, just pushing it a little bit too hard in trying to keep that pace. Could prove a little detrimental to them. Meanwhile, going to jump on bed with Boma here, and is doing an excellent job tailing the pro class drivers. They really are doing a good job leading their class, and they've got quite a substantial gap back to Cook. About, I'd say, a second and a half in it relative to the next driver along. And this is where we start to see drivers find a little bit of their safe zone. So 6 minutes into the race now, 38 minutes and counting. You don't want to be doing anything risky in these parts. You want to just focus on getting a bit of a gap to the competitors that matter. So like for Boma here, yes, they could challenge and go up against the pro drivers for bragging rights, but in the end, whether they pass multiple pro drivers or not, they are still going to be only fighting relative to their own class. So fighting with the likes of these guys up here might not be beneficial to them in the long run. But going a little bit further back, looks like we've got a big sort of battle going through. Galamini, Patan and Pryor all fighting for the same on-track space. And something's got to give. Patan looking a little bit shaky there, coming through the corner. It's looking a little bit like he's on the ropes defensively. And Patan is going to be sort of sitting in about P6 for the time being, but whether they'll be able to stick it out is anyone's guess. So I think at this point they're just trying to get as much on-track mileage as they can relative to their opponents in the class. So Svelto all the way down in net P12. That's a lot of traffic they'll have to sift through. That is a lot of traffic he's going to have to potentially deal with. Of course, this is subject to live stewarding, so thanks to the great team at LSR, we have got live stewarding for this race. So if you see any driving infractions, they are going to be policed in real time. Thanks to the great team and supported by our patrons and supporters. There you go. There's Patan going to be coming in for his drive-through penalty here. He's going to have to serve that. And we see immediately the place is dropping as we head back out on track. Jump on board with Starkey here, who's managed to get a little bit of their own space. Is net P6 for the Pro-Am class right now. You see Patan dropped right down in the classes. Homer's going to be hit with a 20-second penalty. And Boma is going to be hit with a +10. So you can see that the live stewarding is starting to kick in. So I think Boma had a little bit of a dirty incident earlier, a little bit of dirtiness out on the track, so maybe a bit of a dicey situation that they could have avoided if a bit of racecraft was in play there. But looks like we have a bit of a battle going on just up ahead, as Moffat is going to be trading, or at least trading for a bit of on-track space, with the likes of Burrin and Boma. And again, Boma does not need to fight here, because they are not in the same class, but they know if they can get a car between them, and a pro between them, and yeah, an SG30 for Patan, that's got to be rough, that's got to hurt. And there you go, that is P3 on track, but Moffat's not going to let that one go lightly. As you can see here, they're both fighting for track space. Moffat is going to get back round. Is Boma going to retaliate? There you go, Boma is going to be demoted back down to P4. And now, sort of jumping up ahead, Richie is just completely in his own space. He doesn't have to really fight or do much of anything. He just needs to keep his head down and just needs to keep his head in the game in order to, well, in order to win. That's really what it is. Patan is in the pits. I think they're serving the SG30. That's going to be a really tough time for him there. Svelto is going to be handed 15 seconds, I think, for an incident that they had earlier with one of the other Porsche drivers. As you can see, Everett, Sims and Cameron all kind of jostling for a little bit of space out on the track here. A little bit of positional fighting can never hurt anyone, but you've got to keep your wits about you, because one awkward snap could really make things a very bad time for you. Either way, looking around here, these could be the start of something a little bit spicier. As Cameron could be teeing up a move. Doesn't look like it for the time being, though. Sims has got to work his way back up to, say, P16 right now, and net P5 in his relative class. He's gonna have to do a little bit of work to get himself back up. And then looking around, we could see Cook here. Looks like they are about to get around Dismakes, who's going to be yielding, say, blue flag rule in place, and good sportsmanship shown, as other drivers are going to be siphoning out around them. See Cook, in fact, going a little bit wide there. Could be inviting a bit of a positional trade from Pariah, who is going to capitalize and is going to be jumping up. The blue flags are going to be waved as Dismakes is on the inside, allowing the other drivers to go by. Again, great sportsmanship being shown so far. Oh, Galamini with a little bit of a rearward snap. And Rios is going to be handed in live real time 10 seconds is going to be added for an earlier incident. Now this is where the penalties start to stack up, and the race results could be in limbo, could be in the balance. Because we can't get the full live reads, but we can still get a fairly solid idea of where these drivers are going to end up. go. Looks like a little bit of brief calm around the track now. As you can see that we have a few drivers kind of just looking to find their places now. We do have a little bit of a move coming from Blanchette on Cook here, going into the first corner. Very hard, very aggressive there. Rios is going to go a little bit wide on the first corner as well, but is going to be snapping back to the inside. It's also going to be looking to get around Cook here. Cook with the switchback though, and Rios losing the car. As you can see, it's going to be tapping the rear of Cook as well. That is going to be both of the two of them looking like they are in very deep trouble here. Where is Rios in all of this? That is the question. Rios manages to get out of it okay. And that is going to definitely be looked at by the stewards. Rios has already got 10 seconds to his name. And we have seen that a few drivers are maybe looking like a little bit of overly aggressive driving. It's on the cards here. Popping up ahead a little bit. We have Pryor on Gallimini. They both traded places. Pryor's looking to get back. So remember, he's in the class above, so he's not going to be taking too kindly to having their place usurped like this. Not taking too kindly to it at all. As you can see, a 33 flat as their best, 36 from the last lap. So maybe not quite on the pace benchmark that they want to be at right now. Sort of at this point, just looking to balance the race. Remember, there's no mandatory pit stop as well. So they are not required to be going for any pit stops during the race. Of course, it is still an option, and of course they do need to come to the pit lane for serving, for example, stop and go and drive-through penalties. But this is where we get to see a little bit more of the strategy play out, and we start to see a little bit of the meta game between these drivers. So not necessarily when they're going to pit, but it's things instead. The strategy takes its place on the track. It's knowing when to go for overtakes, when to push, when to yield. Key things like this are what separates the top drivers from maybe those who are still finding their way in terms of deeper racecraft and strategy. We could see a big jostle up as Everett is going to be getting a drive-through. Has had a drive-through applied. Boma, Moffat, Guerin going a little bit further wide as these top three continue to fight. Ricci completely on his own. Cook down at the bottom, down in the doldrums of the pack. Cameron and Sims still sort of fighting for the same kind of space on the track. Disbiquez and Grigorelli are fighting as well to get a little bit of room. You can see the banks of penalties coming through. So 10, 15, 20 seconds for this mid-pack here. Doesn't look like anyone's going overly aggressive. This is where we see drivers start to pace themselves a little bit more. So we're coming up to the rough sort of halfway mark of race time here. I'll of course keep you updated. And Blanchette going sort of very deep, I'd say. Going a little bit too deep there and is going to sort of lose their self in terms of on-track space. They're going to have to work their way back up now, I think. They're going to have a little bit of work cut out for them if they do want to retain caught position. Starkey is looking very good though. Net P8 on the track is slowly reeling Blanchette in. Slowly reeling them in here, but they do have a Rios hot on their tail. That McLaren is not going to be breathing any harder down their neck than they are right now, and Starkey needs to respond in some way. So going to keep a level head here. Rios going very wide, sort of trying to get out of the dirty air of the car in front. And as you can see, a couple of penalties being adjusted, so I think we have the drive-through that had just been served. So that, of course, being expunged. Yeah, Rios going very deep, just trying to get some moves in. And in fact, Svelto could be coming up for a potential move as Rios gets 15 more seconds added to their penalty time for the incident that they had earlier with Cook, bringing him down into P15. So that 15 seconds is going to be very difficult, very painful to deal with there. Yeah, Starkey on very good pace so far. And Rios, I'm sure, with that extra 15 seconds tacked on, is not going to be happy. They sort of drum it out to the side, going on the pebbles. I can assure you they are not happy with that right now. Even sort of going a bit too wide. And potentially dropping down to P10 on track against Svelto. Let's see what else is going on track. So we could have a bit of a move here between Hansen and Everett. Here's Everett looking very nice in that livery of theirs. So far, Everett looking like they may have had a bit of a rough earlier race, but is doing just fine in terms of pace. But we see a bit of a positional squabble here as Rios has got around Starkey now. And Starkey looks like they're a bit on the ropes as Svelto could be going for a move as well. Doesn't commit to it, however. They just yield in the last seconds. Rios going very, very wide to sort of carry some pace. And oh, that's contact between Starkey and Svelto. Svelto is going to be going off track. And they are going to be rejoining in P11. But yeah, just a little bit too aggressive there. Ultimately tapping the side of Starkey and going to be dropping themselves down a couple of places. Not going to be the best scenario for them. Got to be a little bit frustrating. Now back on board with Starkey now. They have a bit of clean air. Remember, 25 seconds is not a penalty to be taken lightly. In Starkey's case though, this could mean that they don't have to push too hard unless they're looking to try and take Blanchette as well. They don't need to be fighting. He knows that the 25 seconds when the penalty is applied is going to do a lot of the hard work for him. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw Rios down at the bottom near P14, P15 rather than where they are now. And I think they know that too. So Rios has got to drive like their life depends on it here in order to at least mitigate some of the damage caused by that almighty 25-second penalty. And driving hard they are, as they've already peeled out about half a second's gap to Starkey here. So this is looking very impressive. Despite our earlier misgivings and penalties being applied, all these drivers are putting down an impressive performance. Managing to keep their head down, managing to, let's say, give it their best. Now we are coming to about 7:30 in the morning here in Valencia, and that does mean that maybe we'll start to see the tracks heating up. So they've stayed at a static 24 degrees, and by this point we will have a rubbered in line where it's a little bit hotter with cars. The cars have laid down some of their rubber as they've worn through the tyres. And we can expect to see drivers sticking to that line as best they can. The rubbered in line, of course, rubber bonds with rubber better than it bonds with asphalt. So if as a driver you can stick to the racing line where there's the most rubber laid down on track, then you are going to get the most grip and you are going to have the best speed through the race. But that's also got to be balanced with the dirty air that you're going to encounter on the track. And the marbles. I usually call them pebbles, but they are technically called marbles. You can see the little flecks of rubber that get kicked off when you're scrubbing speed, and maybe little chunks of rubber coming out of your tyre when you're overheating them, and maybe they're blistering a little bit. With 19 cars rocketing around this track at breakneck speed, there's bound to be a little bit of debris that you've got to keep your eye out for. Being on the marbles is the last place you want to be on. So you hop on board with Cook here. So of course did have that unfortunate incident with Rios. Rios has sort of taken the 15-second penalty, so there's a bit of comeuppance there. And now we do have a question of whether Cook can make it back up. So he's on the hot heels of Dismuquez here. And we can see that it's all biding his time. Knows he's against a slower driver, and in fact the blue flags do come out, so he does go round Dismuquez with no problem. But it's still got a fairly sizable gap that they need to make up in order to pass Cameron and start to reel themselves back into where they want to be. As Sim in P15 is in fact going to be handed a 15-second penalty for causing a collision with Gregorelli in the amateur division. So, again, more penalties coming out. Last thing you really want to be seeing. The last thing you want to be seeing in all of this is a penalty popping up against your name, because that just spells trouble for your later race as well as your current one. Got Spelto here against Homer on the track here. And looking for opportunity. I'm not sure what Spelto can see. You can see he goes a little bit narrower than Homer there on the corner, as Homer in fact goes a little bit onto the grass. So a little bit aggressive, too aggressive I'd say, on the apex. Means that they did not get the line that they wanted. Svelto could have a chance to catch up here if they play their cards right. But Homer is going to have, of course, the advantage of not having to deal with the dirty air of any cars in front of them. Svelto's got a much harder time. They could use a little bit of slipstream here, where you've got the car in front of you cutting through the air on your behalf. You can benefit a little bit from reduced drag, but that can only go so far, and it's not that powerful as to climb over several tenths gap. It's only a minor help. You can see, in fact, going a little bit deep there, just missing the apex. Svelto is going to be a little bit on the ropes at the moment. Doesn't look like they're quite hitting the apexes that they need to hit. And we have 15 minutes left in the race to decide who's going to be coming out on top. So here we go, 15 minutes left to go in the race. Folks, to say we are coming up to the final third, the final 15 minutes of the race. And that does mean, as you can see, a little bit of reflections coming off the cars, that the sun is getting to rise here. So the sun is now rising, and you can see the beautiful orange sheen on some of these paint jobs. But this also means that the track is going to get a little bit warmer, and this could either be a blessing or a curse for some of these cars, depending on the setups that they've got. So having a car a bit too aggressive on the setup means that as the track gets hotter, you might struggle to control surface temps. And then looking around the other areas of the field, everyone's kind of netted their own space, but Guerin could be trying to get a move done on Moffat here. See them getting scarily close to the rear of that Aston Martin, as they did trade places slightly earlier in the race, and Guerin's looking for revenge. Boma did get up into P2 through all of this, but remember that 10-second penalty is going to be dropping them right back down. They might have got a little bit of a key advantage here, because being ahead of these two means that they can push on track. And oh, looks like a little bit of a dicey penultimate corner means that Guerin could be right on the tail of Moffat. He's going to be going into the inside, heading into the last corner. No contact, good racing from the two of them, as Moffat is going to yield and concede that position for P3 to Julian Guerin in the BMW. The only BMW on track. He's proven that it's just as formidable a car as any of the rest of them on the field here tonight. And Moffat isn't going to be taking that one lightly, however, as you can see them going very aggressive, trying to go and get a little bit of a short braking distance. Not quite a dive, but they have shown their commitment to try and continue pushing and getting Guerin on the edge of the limit. Just stressing them out here. Key thing is that they don't want to be hyper aggressive, but they do want to pile that pressure on. So that BMW, a little bit unwieldy at times, but the Aston is breathing hot down their neck and hot on their heels. One thing I do wonder is whether Boma has got 10 seconds of gap against Galamini in order to completely mitigate the penalty that they received earlier. Looks like on the cards is about 6 to 7 seconds, so they're going to have to keep going, and maybe preying on Guerin and Moffat continuing to fight could be the key cornerstone in ensuring that they win in their class and their division here. Richie is completely untouchable still, and looks to really have this entire session on lock. In fact, just checking a little bit further down, you can see that Hansen, I think, was caught up in a bit of a skirmish earlier, but yeah, down in P17, not looking the most comfortable with themselves right now, and Everett does have a little bit of space to themselves as well. I just wonder where we're going to see Ricci in all of this, as we've got Cook and Cameron continue to jostle the space. Spelto and Homer continue to run very close to one another. Starkey and Rios have a bit of a gap between them, but Starkey can just play it safe and bide his time owing to the time penalty. Patan kind of in the middle of the mix there, but is going to be ultimately a lap behind. And I can't spot Ricci for the life of me. Oh, there we go. We've got him, say, just ahead of Everett, and in fact is going to be chasing down Another Lamborghini, and that's Sim. So he's about to overtake P15, and Hansen is going to be handed a drive-through penalty for one of their earlier infractions, one of their earlier contacts. So they are going to be going in now to serve that, and is going to be coming through much worse for it. I'm not sure if they're going to be coming out ahead or behind of Patan. I'm not really able to tell at this point in time. So here we are, Galamini, who is technically, I believe, first in class at the moment for the Pro-Am. And looking very confident in themselves with about 10 minutes to go. Oh, the drive-through was track limits, I see. So yeah, drive-through in that case, yes. Track limits, overextending, being awarded a drive-through for multiple infractions. Yeah, goes show saying can't mess with the track limits here. We've seen some drivers get a little bit friendly with the runoff and cutting it a little bit fine in areas. But you've still got to play it safe because you could be awarded penalties for excessive track limits abuse. Yeah, so final dying minutes of the race here. Looks like Guerin has firmly got away from Moffat here. It's about a second between. And you can see that he's hot on Boma's heels. Looking to sort of assert the dominance in the situation, saying, no, I am the pro driver here out of us. You need to step aside. So going fairly wide there. We'll just see how many laps they could complete. You can see that there's about a 30-second interval between Richie and Boma here, which is crazy to think about. They've got such a massive time span between them. It is absolutely ridiculous to see the amount of gap that he's managed to pull out over the course of the race thus far. Not even accounting for penalties. It looks like Waring could be looking to attack here. Or are they? I think Bowman's of a different class, so this is battle for pride only. So this is a fight in spirit. Not necessarily required one. You see, Guerin going for a little bit of a tip-off, noting that Boma needs to feel like they're under pressure now. Almost trying to spook them a little bit. I think that's the name of the game. Just the mind games. This is where you really get into the mind games of being a driver. You can see there, goes narrow, doesn't fully commit to the move, but doesn't have to. The fact that he's there and is pushing for these kind of moves, even without fully committing, is certainly going to play on Boma's mind here. The more pressure that you can mount, the more likely that the driver you are up against is going to make a mistake. And consistency is key. On a timed race like this, you cannot afford any mistakes because those will cost you much needed time. But you can see here, Boma and Guerin are going to make contact. He is going to be down the inside. Not sure whether, we couldn't really see from the camera angle whether that was the door being closed or whether that was an contact between Moffat and Guerin there. So Moffat is going to be completely out of the space, out of the running there. He is going to retain P4, but at what cost? It's going to be such a big gap and such a big bruise to the ego as well with that move. Things kind of went bad to worse for both drivers involved in that. So Boma and Guerin first making contact when he goes for that initial overtake, and then Moffat kind of trying to have a little bit of an on-track battle with Guerin, but as Guerin's recovering, is still almost in that panic mode, that fight or flight mode. When you get into a collision like that, it takes a second for you to calm down and bring yourself back into the racing situation. And with that in mind, I'm not sure if we're going to see any kind of penalties be applied. We'll of course have to wait on the stewards, the live verdict, to see what happens there. One thing's for sure though, all eyes are on the timing tower to see if any kind of penalties are getting applied, because that completely changes the dynamic of a race. I'm not sure if these guys have got race engineers, maybe sort of talking down their headsets, giving them key info, and coordinating a little bit, but we just don't know what is going to happen. And of course, fighting with someone who's got a penalty means that you can be much less aggressive because you'll win on the penalty anyhow. Right, so it looks like we have word back from the officials that there's going to be no further action regarding the incidents involving Guerin, Boma and Moffat. No further action. So Homer and Spelto have been sort of keeping in each other's space for the longest time now, but crucially, they don't seem to be moving between spaces. They do seem to be moving back and forth in terms of gap to one another, but no actual positional moves. I think that's very curious, because I think they both acknowledge that they do not need to fight per se. They do not necessarily need to fight. Which is the key thing. Understanding when you do and don't need to be aggressive. And oh, looks like a little bit of a slide there from Hansen. Maybe struggling to keep the car under control a little bit there. But the understanding of when and when not to fight is probably your most valuable skill as a racing driver. Understanding the situation and knowing when the time is to be aggressive versus when to maybe yield, hold back a bit. Understand that you do not need to be hyper aggressive all the time, especially when you're trying to, say, conserve tire life. It's crucial. Final couple of minutes here left in the race, folks. And this is where we could see some maybe last minute moves. One can only question and hope for any sort of last lap drama to be going on, be going down. So far things look quite tame and quite measured from all drivers on field. So let's take a look at the overall times in terms of, say, best runners. In our first place for the Pro Division, we have got Roberto Ricci, say 31.6 best lap, so fastest lap of the session to boot as well. and looking very strong, nigh on untouchable in this scenario. Looks like there is in fact going to be a potential upset in the standings. We're just waiting confirmation. And in the lead, oh, there it is. Say 5 seconds is going to be handed to Guerin in the final minute of the race here. So it is not going to be an NFA. It is going to be a 5-second penalty for that collision with Moffat. And that could be demoting them down. So leader of the amateur division, Francesco Svelto, is looking good. But they do have 15 seconds of penalty. So it could, in fact, go to Cameron. Scott Cameron could potentially see themselves winning in the amateur division, with Hansen heading in fact into the pits. Looks like an early retirement, and Boma leads, but they could just about have enough of a gap on Gallimini to lock in a potential a win for their division if they've played their cards right on this one. But there we go, that is end of a race timer. So now we just wait for drivers to cross the line. This is also the last hurrah, the final, what a swan song for some of these runners here. That is end of the race. The checkered flag is to be drawn. Hansen, I think, is going to, looks like, retire, it seems like, in the pits. A bit of a low end to a low race. One to maybe forget for the likes of Hansen. So here we go, as we come through final corner now, and to the checkered flag to be waved. Finishing the lap here, Roberto Ricci across the line, and that is a race over. And you have your winner for the Pro Division. They're looking around the field here. And see a few more coming across the line now. Got Despique, Sims, Grigorelli. Boma about to cross the line now as well, in the lead for the Pro Am division. But with that 10-second penalty application, that could be a big asterisk, a big question mark. Guerin could also be coming across the line. But Moffat could be putting dissuasions for that. And everyone now peeling in as the sun breaks cover, 7:51 a.m. So an early race, but certainly plenty of excitement. Series pulling off to the side, everyone getting themselves back into the pits here. And looks like jumping out. And there we are, folks. So your final standings is going to be Roberto Ricci taking the win for the Pro Division. Boma is going to be taking the win for the Pro Am division. Even with the 10-second penalty applied, they are still going to be ahead of Gallimini and going to be retaining their key spot, unless I'm getting something mistaken here. Believe that is full times completed. And I'm not sure if there's any post applications. This does look a little bit wonky here. Oh no, there we go. And that is with Svelto. Even with their penalties being applied, is going to take the win for the amateur division. So what a race that it was. Now, just as a reminder, folks, we do have live stewarding, but there also could be opportunities where maybe the stewards miss a incident on the track, and we do have live stewarding for a reason, but we also can have reports for incidents coming through. So these are provisional. These could potentially change, but these are also locked in within the 24 hours period. So after 24 hours, the reporting is locked out, and that is where you get to the issue of final ratification. But there we go, folks. This is it. This is where we sign off, and this is where we say goodbye for now. This is where we say goodbye now, folks. Of course, the Twilight Cup is just beginning. And it is just beginning here now. And we have got plenty more in store for you. So, for those who joined us on our first round of the Season 2 of the Twilight Cup, thank you for joining us. That's all we can say is just thank you for joining us. You have all been amazing in the chat, and you have all been absolutely stellar. So next up, we can see that we do have a few drivers that we have to keep an eye on. So Ricci being a big one in terms of pace, just absolutely destroyed it out there. Over the course of the 45-minute race, they had about 40 seconds clear of Guerin. They're about 45 seconds clear. And that is a big deal. So I am personally pretty excited to see who's going to be coming out on top for our next round. So next round, same time next week, July 14th, is going to be our next round up. And our next race is going to be at none other than Misano. So Misano, you definitely don't want to miss it. Great track for this kind of racing, and we will see you there. Take care, folks. Have a good one. See you next time.